Welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm thrilled to welcome you to Keeping It Brief, which is a service of the Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition. I'm your host, Maria Evans. And today our guest is Kathy Bennett, who is the director of the Bucks County Area Agency on Aging since 2017. So she's been through a lot in the past few years and can give us great insights on where things are going, or should be going, I should say. Kathy's going to discuss some of the primary concerns facing seniors and the ability to provide them with services, the lack of direct care workers, the caregiver stress, the need for an update of the Adult Protective Services Act, and an update on the assessment enrollment issue and other key issues. So that's a lot, but in 45 minutes, we'll get a good handle on it. We invite your questions. Please feel free to put them in the chat. And we'll make sure that she addresses all of those. I also want to thank AARP today, who is sponsoring our Keeping It Brief. We're appreciative of their support. This midday gathering on Zoom is going to be your monthly opportunity to get a quick update on an important issue, that one of our partners or our issue specialists is following. I want to begin with a quick note about our technology. When you joined this event, your microphone was muted and your camera turned off automatically. You can see and hear us, but nobody can see and hear you. So feel free to relax, grab some lunch, get a snack, and enjoy today's conversation. And again, make use of the chat function, and we'll make sure that we get your questions addressed. If you have any question or comment that you put in chat, that's great. We'll also include the link back to the site. A little bit about us. The Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition is a nonpartisan coalition of individuals and organizations that envision a socially just and respectful society. We were founded in 2008 and designated as a nonprofit in 2015 to educate and advocate for gender equity and economic security for all. And we're thrilled to call more than 300 individuals and nearly 50 organizations our partners. By working together, we can speak with one voice and make that voice more powerful as we work for systemic change. So a few notes on today's conversation. The afternoon's conversation is being recorded. It should be posted on our website, bcwac.org, by this evening. And also you can find there all the copies of all the other Keeping It Briefs that we've done since the fall. So you'll have access to all that great information from many of our partners and issue specialists. Please take a few minutes to visit the website, not only for those, but also for blog posts and to track legislation and other things that might be of interest specifically to you about this issue or any of the other issues that we follow. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we would love if you did, and if you shared that material to really help do what we try to do, speak with one voice, and then share that voice to get others on board. Today's program, like other educational programs that we offer, is free. And while we operate very efficiently, we do have some costs. So if you feel like this program and the work in general of the coalition is of value to you, please consider making a financial contribution, and you can do that on our website or find information there about how to do it in person. So with that housekeeping out of the way, I'm excited to welcome Kathy Bennett, who, as I said, was the director of the Bucks County Area Agency on Aging. She has a master's degree in social work from the University of Pittsburgh with a certification in gerontology and is a licensed social worker. She has experience working as a social worker and in management in various senior settings, including hospital geriatric assessment teams, home health care, supervising in-home services, and director of an adult daycare program. Before working with the Area Agency on Aging, Kathy was Deputy Director of Network of Victim Services, where she spearheaded a number of special projects, including the Bucks County Crimes Against Older Adults Task Force, forensic interviewing of victimized seniors and people with disabilities, and grants to enhance services to senior crime victims. She also serves on the Pennsylvania Association of Area Agencies on Aging's Legislative Subcommittee, that is a mouthful, and the board of the Bucks County Foundation for Aging. So I think you'll agree that we cannot get a more qualified expert on this topic. Welcome, Kathy, please. Tell us about the
You.
state of aging in Pennsylvania.
I will. I have a few housekeeping things. One is that I see a number of names of people that I knew when I used to work at Nova and people that I work with now. And so it's really nice to have you all here. Unlike Maria, I'm going to say that if you want to turn your camera on so I can say hi, that would be great, but you don't have to, of course. But if you want to, it's always nice to see faces I haven't seen for a while. So that's great. I do want to thank the coalition. It is one of my favorite organizations, and I'm always impressed with the work that they do. I knew them when I was at Network of Victim Assistance, and certainly since I've been at the Area Agency on Aging. And so it's great to have this organization that brings together in a nonpartisan way, looking at the issues. And so I do appreciate that you've invited me to talk a little bit about aging issues and what's been happening in that world right now. So thank you. And Maria is like I think she should be on TV as, a talk show host. There's Nancy Moore. As a talk show host. So I'm just going to put it out there, it's Maria, if you get an opportunity, you'd be great at it. So thanks. So I do want to spend a lot of the time talking about some things that we're dealing with in the world of assisting seniors that have to do more with protective services and the Older Adult Protective Services Act. But before that, there are a couple of other things that are happening that I just want to touch upon because I think they're important, and I'd be happy to talk more about them with somebody or to give you more information. But one of the things is just and I think you all know this, but I will reinforce that it's happening. We are, of course, seeing a growing population of seniors in our county, in our state, and nationally. Right now, about 25% of the Bucks County population is over the age of 60, and that's about 165,000 individuals. That's expected to go up from 25% to 30% in 5 years. So we're going to be looking at, depending on what happens with the population in Bucks County, but anywhere from 180 to 200,000 people that are 60 and above. And for purposes here, the Bucks County Area Agency of Aging and the Older Adult Protective Services and the Older Americans Act all look at seniors being 60 and above. I was writing a grant when I was at Nova, and it was with somewhat funded with with AARP, and I had just turned 50, and seniors were considered 50 and above, and I just was like, I'm not sure I can handle this, but persevere on. But now 60 and above is sort of the age that we're looking at. So we're looking at that 30% increase. The number is going to continue. The other thing is that we will see an increase of the oldest old, and that is individuals that are like 75 to 85 years of age and 85 plus. So we are all living longer, and that can bring some blessings, and it can also bring some challenges to not only ourselves individually, but as policies and systems and legislation. So we're growing in the senior population. The other thing I just wanted to point out is the importance of home and community-based services. Very often people think when you're talking about services to seniors that you're talking mainly about long-term care facilities, and they hold a very important place in the continuum of care for seniors. But most individuals who are seniors, between 4 to 8%, will go to a facility of some kind in their life. So the vast majority of individuals do not go into a long-term care facility of some sort. And so a lot of that care is usually received in the home. It is something that services in the home will save money as opposed to someone going into a long-term care facility. And I'm bringing that up for a reason, and I'll touch on that in a few minutes. But also the fact that people want to stay in their homes. That's where they would like to be, if at all possible. And this is not a dig at nursing homes or facilities at all, because as I said, they're very important and provide an important service and care for seniors. It's just opening up that image that we sometimes have of seniors being in a nursing home as they get older. That is not the case. So all of this is leading to, of course, some things that revolve around caregiver concerns and caregiver issues. And the last meeting that was held last month, Becky talked a lot about caregiver issues and lack of paid leave. So I'm not going to repeat any of that kind of thing, but just to sort of piggyback on that a little bit, how that does impact with seniors. There is, and again, I know this isn't going to be news to many of you, but there is definitely a lack of direct care workers. Professionally, those individuals who work in home health care, hospice, daycare programs, et cetera, those programs. They are generally, that population that works as direct care workers are 90% women. On average, they're age 46. They are women of color or immigrant status, and their average annual salary is about $29,000. So that comes out to about $11 to $13 an hour. It's an important group that does important work. And we're seeing a lot of individuals who are not, for some reason, it's not because of all the great money they're making, but there's a real reason why individuals are not moving towards becoming direct care workers. It's tough, hard work, and there is not a high amount of reimbursement for doing that. So you can do something like work in a Walmart or a McDonald's or an Amazon center or something like that and make more money. So it's really going to get to a critical phase soon with this lack of direct care workers. We're seeing this at the Area Agency on Aging in that we have a waiting list for our in-home services of about 150 people. Now, some of those individuals, their needs are kind of small. They get on the list, but they're not necessarily in dire needs, but some of them are in real need. And there is a lack of service being out there that we can get to provide for them. The other thing is that direct care workers usually have about a 70% turnover rate because, again, as I said, it's hard work. And so all these things are coalescing into a perfect storm. The other is the lack of, as Becky talked about last month, was the lack of paid leave. And this also includes those individuals who need some kind of leave in order to help an older family member and to assist them. This gets to be a real struggle and a real difficult time for family members who, again, are trying to assist someone in their home, and yet they don't have the time to be able to take off. They can't afford to take off. And it can cause a whole lot of stress and also a whole lot of problems for the senior who needs that care themselves. We have been dealing for, since I got into geriatrics back in the early 80s, we've been dealing with what's called the sandwich generation, you know, where an individual is taking care of both their kids and their older parents. I don't know if this is a term out there. It's just one that I've come up with, but we've moved from being a sandwich generation to a club sandwich generation, because what we're dealing with are not only as an individual who is maybe 60, 65 years old, taking care of older parents, they may also be taking care of their children who maybe have some drug and alcohol issues or have disabilities of their own, and then their grandchildren. So we have grandparents caring for grandchildren who can no longer live with their parents for whatever reason. And so now they're being cared for by their grandparents. And so we've got 4 generations in some families that we're assisting and trying to help. And that's a lot to be able to have to juggle and to handle. So it's getting more and more difficult. So if you ever hear the term club sandwich generation, that was me. I came up with it, but you can use it. Also, the other thing is that the medical assistance reimbursement for home care is not keeping trend with other industries. Currently, they're at about $17.52 an hour. The home care industry through the PA Home Care Association has on their website that they're really advocating right now for $20.58, which is still about half of the amount of money that's reimbursed for long-term care facilities for direct care workers. That still does not, that will just cover costs and not really increase salaries of direct care workers substantially. So again, it's a real issue and a real concern for both caregivers and for the provision of home and community-based services. I'm bringing these up, and usually it's at this point when I'm listening to a speaker that I think, okay, Kathy, what do you want us to do? Because you're bringing it up. You know, there's got to be something you want us to do. I don't have anything at this point other than to say that as I get information about when the state budget negotiations are happening, those kinds of things. If I hear from organizations, I will certainly let the Advocacy Coalition know. And I also have direct links with the caregiver subcommittee of the Advocacy Coalition, and we'll let them know to let you folks know that there are some things you can do. But I'm fully supportive, of course, of the Paid Leave Act and anything that can be done in those arenas, because all those things are going to help us. Okay, I'm just going to switch gears just a little bit.
Good.
Is that all right, Maria? Any questions or anything?
Absolutely. In fact, as I was going to ask you, when you talked about starting in geriatrics, I think that was about the time that you mentioned to me that that was the last time that the Ultra Adult Productive Services Act was updated. So I thought that would be a nice segue if you were ready to go there.
Not quite. I have one more thing and then I'm going to go there.
Okay.
So hold that thought. Just pretend you didn't hear her. So the one other thing that I wanted to just mention, and it was a question that was asked, but I was going to bring it anyway. It was because the Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition has been really supportive and helpful with us trying to advocate for the needs of seniors who are going through the medical assistance waiver process in order to get eligible for either the medical assistance coverage to go into a nursing home or to receive services in their home. And that has been a concern because of the fact that Maximus is the organization that's currently doing enrollment, and there have been great concerns about their ability and the type of service that they're providing, and a lot of concerns that they are never hitting and hadn't been hitting their contracted rates of service that they were meant to provide until COVID hit, and they had to do everything telephonically, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, the advocacy was around the issue that Maximus was going to be provided not only the section that had to do with enrollment, but also with assessment for application for medical assistance. So let me just give you a little bit of quick background, and then I'll follow up and let you know what's happening in that world. But right now, well, at one time, the area agencies on agings provided, if you were a senior or a person with a disability and you wanted to apply for medical assistance in order to get services in the home, the area agency on aging would provide all the various aspects of helping you to enroll in that, such as getting an assessment, and then getting all the financial forms and everything's in, making sure that that person was eligible, and then setting up the services themselves. About 10, 15 years ago, the state, through the Department of Human Services, decided that that just wasn't a good system. Too much was relying on the AAAs, and so they decided to break it into silos. And so those silos became assessment, enrollment, and then picking a service provider, and then the service delivery. So of those 4 silos, the Area Agency on Aging continued to provide the assessment piece. And that is when Maximus took over the enrollment piece, which again, the AAAs used to do the whole continuum. So about 3 years ago, the Department of Human Services decided, that's not a very good system. It takes too long. It takes about 3 to 6 months for someone to go through that whole process of getting approved for medical assistance for either in-home or nursing care. And so what do you do during that time? That's the problem. It just takes too long. And so their thought was to go back and combine the assessment piece with the enrollment piece. And so the AAAs across the state, through the Pennsylvania Association of Area Agencies on Aging, say that 5 times real fast, or P4A is known, applied to get the contract to continue to do the assessment and take on the enrollment. Really, when someone needs medical assistance, and one of the big things is showing that financially they're eligible for this. Well, I don't know about you, but even for me, who does this kind of work, pulling together all the financial documents you need sometimes to prove that you're eligible for something is really difficult. And then on top of that, if you're someone that's not really been keeping track of those kinds of things, like my husband's grandparents used to keep a lot of their documents in a steam cooker pan in their closet, because they felt that would keep it safe, because that pressure cooker thing would, I don't know. But anyway, finding those documents getting up-to-date forms, finding, contacting banks to get the latest is really difficult. And this is where Maximus has really dropped the ball on that type of thing. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is that there's been a lot of pushback because Department of Human Services decided they were going to go with Maximus to continue not only the enrollment, but to take on the assessment piece. And these are not my words. These were legislators' words that said, why would you give someone that couldn't do it in the first place even more to do? So the coalition has been really helpful. There was a lot of advocacy that happened to try and encourage the Department of Human Services to rethink that thought of having Maximus take on the additional. And by the way, Maximus is a for-profit company that is not located in Pennsylvania. So that was the other piece of it. They didn't know the players. They don't know all the very county assistance offices and those kinds of things, but that's part of it. So the latest is that P4A was invited by the Department of Human Services after P4A had put in about 4 or 5 different, what's the word I'm looking for? Not appeals, but fighting is the only word I can come up with, but through the courts about this decision. So DHS went to P4A and said, let's negotiate. Let's talk about this. And so negotiations with P4A have been going on since February. Until that time, all the various protests have been put on hold. P4A has been really, even though I'm part of the AAA, has been really quiet about and keeping it very close to the chest about what it is that they're negotiating for. But what I'm hearing is that it is to continue our assessment piece for the AAAs and then possibly taking over some additional other pieces. But I don't know what that is. So we have had our current contract to continue assessments to be continued through August when the contract is up. So I should know some more information as the summer rolls on, and I will certainly let you all know what happens with that, because again, you've been very helpful with that. But it again speaks to the fact that we have various systems and things in place that can just make it really difficult for someone as they're getting older to get the services and to get what they need in order for the care that they need and are eligible for. Okay.
Are you hopeful, Kathy, that in August things will go in the right direction?
I will be happy if the AAAs can continue to do the assessment piece, because again, we at least are in an initial connection with that senior and they know they can call us back if they need something. What I won't be happy for is if they continue with Maximus, because again, the AAA has been sort of picking up the slack where they've been dropping the ball. So, I mean, the ideal would be if they'd say, yeah, we're going to turn it all over to the AAA network, but I doubt that.
And that's not really what's being asked right now, right? It's just
Correct.
To get back to the assessment. Okay.
I think so. I think that's pretty much what it's been. Yeah.
Do you want to shift gears into the Older Adult Protective Services Act? That'd be
absolutely. Great. So again, one of the things I wanted to bring up were some things that might be things that you as advocates can think about and know about what's happening in the aging world that you might be able to do some advocacy around. The area agencies on aging, or AAAs, are tasked with providing the service called protective services. And those are similar to the protective services that you know about with regard to children and youth services, so that if there is some type of abuse occurring in a situation, a care manager, social worker. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to tell you is my light goes off. It's on a timer, so I just have to rock back and forth to turn it back on from time to time. So I'm not, in the dark all the time. But anyway, so it's similar to children and youth, but it is, of course, different. That a social worker will go out and do an evaluation if someone is been a report of some type of elder abuse. We are different in that, of course, we're dealing with seniors. And so unlike children, adults have a right to make their own decisions. and they have a right to make poor decisions. So there are times that we will go out and make an evaluation and an investigation and determine that, yeah, this isn't the best setup, that you probably don't want and I probably don't want, but they have a right to live this way. And so that's the best that we can do. We'll offer services, we'll encourage utilization of different things that might help them, some clean out kinds of things, but we can't force it upon them. Similarly, to unlike what happens in children and youth. The only caveat is that we can do some of that if the person is found to be cognitively incompetent and unable to make those decisions. And then there's a court order process that has to go through with that. So we do that assessment, we do that investigative piece. Across the state, there has been an increase of 65% of protective service cases in the last 5 years. At the Bucks County Area Agency on Aging, when I started in 2017, we did 482 investigations that year with a staff of 10 protective service staff members. So about 500 investigations were the average a year that we did. In 2021, we did 1,384 investigations with 12 staff members. So we almost tripled, and we added only 2 more staff persons to that. This year, if we're going at the same rate that we've been going so far this year, we'll see about 1,500 cases of reporting elder abuse, and we still just have 12 staff members. So your question may be, why is there such an increase? There's a couple of different things. One is that there's been a lot of education out there about protective services and the fact that it's available to make a report. You can do it anonymously. Here's where you call, those types of things. And so with increased education, there's increased reporting. Some entities are mandated to report. And those, and I'm not giving you a complete list. The document itself, the Older Adult Protective Services Act, is about 70 pages. So I'm not going to go through everything, but there are certain parts of some groups that need to report, and those include long-term care facilities, if there are certain things, and financial institutions that have been added on as mandated reporters. So we have been getting more people reporting because they're mandated to report. Some of that reporting, as you might expect, is sometimes by organizations who aren't doing their own initial evaluation as to whether it really does rise to a protective service concern, but want to basically make sure they're covering as much as they can. And so we will get some reports that really have absolutely no validity in being reported to us. So we, for example, may have a nursing facility call us because 2 residents are arguing that someone stole $5 from them. And so they call us in to do an investigation. We've gotten a lot of banks that will contact us, which is great, around financial crimes and what they're seeing. But again, sometimes they don't think through whether it really does rise to the level of needing an investigative process, because it'll be such things as someone that is over the age of 60 and has an overdrawn credit card. Well, good grief, how many of us have done that? I don't know about you, but you know. And
so Kathy, have you seen that there's any, the percentage, the number has gone up, but how much the percentages of ones that are really cases that you've had to intervene with and you've had to do things? So are they pulling in, other than these extraneous ones, is there more being done?
Yes. So there are more, I would say, and I have some staff that are on, so if they want to put in the chat any kinds of additional information, but I would say out of, for example, last year when we had about 1,400, I would say clearly 1,100 of those were definitely needed some type of investigation, that were substantiated and needed to move forward.
So it's at least increased by double. It's at least.
Oh, at least. Yeah. The other thing is that we are, as I said, we're dealing with more seniors. And so the population is getting increasingly larger. And so that is another reason why that will occur. I also wanted to mention Well, I'll get to that in a second. Okay. So we've been getting all these increase of cases. I just want to point out that I know this will be shocking for you, but we've had flat funding from the Pennsylvania legislature for our services for the last 8 years or so. We did have a small increase in 2018, specifically for protective services of $52,000, which was great, but that doesn't pay for really even a position. And so it's, it's nice, but it's a drop in the bucket kind of thing.
So Kathy, I'm sorry. Good. Complete your thoughts. I have a question that I wanted to ask.
Okay. So if we wanted to, we should have up to about at least 15 to hit minimum. We should have 15 staff members. So we would need an additional maybe $350,000 all told in order to be really about where we're at. That's just for Bucks County. Okay. Go ahead, Maria, you had a question.
The question that came in was, is dementia considered in the decision-making as to whether a senior can decide to accept or decline services? Would this become a court decision?
Yes, to both. So there are some situations where it's pretty clear and the person knows that they have dementia, or the family members are there and they can explain and show that they've been caring for them and they have dementia. And so their ability to make those decisions on their own is pretty clear cut, that they have difficulty doing that. But we do have cases where it's not clear cut and we don't have family members involved, or they haven't seen anyone. So we do have, this is part of our expenses, but we do have a psychiatric geriatrician on board who will go to people's homes and do an evaluation. And so he will make that assessment as to whether that person is competent or not to make decisions. That still does not mean that we just go in and do whatever we want. We still have to go through the court system. And sometimes it will depend on getting a guardian for that person in order to assist them. We make that our last resort because we never want to take away someone's rights to make their own decisions. But there are times where something like that is pretty much the best thing that's going to happen for that individual and the safest thing.
So Kathy, I'm looking at the clock and I want to make sure you get into at least the last two things. And one was you were definitely going to ask us what actions you wanted us to take.
Perfect.
And the second one is to address a question that came in earlier about where are the gray panthers that we knew from?
Yeah,
so I wanted to make sure you had time to take both of those before we're automatically
shut off,
taken off.
So yeah, and that was a great question about the gray panthers. But let me just tell you, so to finish up the thought on that is that one of the things that's been difficult with the Protective Services Act for our staff and for seniors themselves is the fact that we want to ensure that we are doing things, of course, by the legislative mandates that are part of that. But the Older Adult Protective Services Act was implemented in 1987. And other than some small minor adjustments in 1997, there really hasn't been any large changes. And so we certainly want to things have changed, whether you believe it or not, in the last 30 or 40 years. So there wasn't such a thing as the financial and credit crimes and internet scams and those kinds of things. So there are things that really do need to be put into a revised Older Adult Protective Services Act. For about the last 6 or 7 years, there's been at least a lot of conversation with legislators around the best way to do that. Right now, there's a bill that is out there by Senator Hennessy. It's House Bill 1681. Senator Hennessy is, I believe, from Montco and Chester counties. And so his bill would provide a portion of what some of the things that are needed, not everything, but some of the things. So if we can start picking away at some of this, that's better than not having anything. So this would strengthen background checks for direct care workers in long-term care settings and in personal care. Currently, nursing facilities can hire someone with a criminal record. There's nothing that precludes them from doing that. And so this bill would put in some guidelines around that so that they're taking care of some very, very vulnerable individuals. And we can talk about that at another point, but that's one thing. The other is to expand mandated reporters to include home health, hospice, and assisted living, and home health, hospice, and assisted living facilities. They're mentioned in the law, but they are not spelled out. And so they just want to make it very clear that they would be part of the mandated reporters. And then the third thing, which is really would be helpful, is to include financial exploitation training of financial institutions, and then also allow the sharing of information and records between AAA Protective Services and those workers at the bank, so that they can work on some things, because that's always a downfall, not being able to get those. I'm happy to share a copy of the bill. There's a blog post about it and some other information, but it's House Bill 1681. It's currently in committee still, the Aging Committee. And so we're hoping that it gets out of there, and we're pushing to see that to hope that it does before the end of the year.
And just so everyone knows, they can get access to that blog post, which has a link to it in the Women's Advocacy Coalition under blog posts. So there's a link to that bill there.
Great.
Great. Do you want to take on the Gray Panthers?
Yes, I do. So, when I started in the 80s providing services, the Gray Panthers were really active and involved. And so I thought this was great that I saw this question. But from what I've been able to find out, is that the original group that started back in the 60s and 70s continued on in various formations until it was dissolved formally in 2015. But there's now a National Council of Gray Panther Networks out of Michigan, which has some city chapters that are part of the network. And some of those and there's a very active one in New York City. There's an active group in San Francisco, a couple of them in Michigan. I'm not quite sure why, but I found 4 or 5 different groups in Michigan and some of the other states. They don't seem as well organized and coalesced as they were before. And Philadelphia used to have their own chapter, and that was dissolved. So there's room here, Women's Advocacy Coalition, if you'd like to think about a partner to help you to bring forth another Gray Panthers chapter in Bucks County, we could talk.
And I'm hearing that you want to start that, right, Kathy?
No. I want to talk with other people about collating with that, to collaborate.
No, you know the rule. The person who mentions it gets.
Yeah, I know. It's the one that gets to do it. Yeah, I know.
Is there anything else? I mean, I know there's a ton.
I know, and I went through a lot of stuff, so I apologize. It was a lot to throw in 45 minutes.
Not at all. There's a lot, and you made it quite clear, but is there anything we've missed? Looking over my notes, and I think you've touched on all of those that I was able to bring up. I talked about, what's going to be happening. Is there a timing on this? You said it's sitting in the Aging Committee.
Yeah, the timing is, again, the push is to try to get it out of there and up for vote before the end of the year. Okay. And so I look to some of you who have worked very hard at some of the legislative advocacy to help know what's the best way to push it out of a committee and out for a vote. I know, Tam, you have all kinds of great information and magic wands to do that. So, if you can just let me borrow your magic wand, that would be great.
Okay. Well, we'll expect Tam to let us know what we should be working on as well as that. As always, we turn to Tam. Thank you. Well, I guess then I will wrap up with a little bit of gratitude, because I want to make sure that we are able to end on time, being very respectful of all of your time. And I want to thank again AARP for sponsoring today's Keeping It Brief. And I thank the Board of Directors for the Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition, and to all the issue specialists who volunteer their time to closely follow the issues and track legislation that is necessary to help us create a better society. And I want to thank all of you who joined us today, and for your questions, for this afternoon, for keeping it brief, and all the supporters of the coalition. And I can just tell you right now, Kathy, I don't know if you're checking chat, but there's a lot of thanks for you in there. And I just want to add my thanks to that, because you've provided us with a lot of information, in a very digestible and not depressing way, because so many times we hear that there's all these problems, but there are solutions that can be pursued. So that's wonderful. So thank you for joining us and sharing your time, your talent, all that great information, and all the work you do every day to make our society better, and especially take care of seniors. which one I will become apparently in August. So there you go. And we'll be back to keeping it, again, just a reminder that this will be posted. So please feel free to share it by the end of today, and take a look at all the other Keeping It Briefs on our website. We'll be back again in September on the 7th at 1:30 for the next Keeping It Brief. So please save that date for our conversation then. Kathy, thank you so much.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it. It was great to see some of you and to know that you're here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.